Programmers have said that coding in general will disappear when no code tools came out, like WordPress, Joomla, Wix, even Webflow. And even with these no code tools, you have to understand that there's going to be a learning curve. And even if you don't have experience, you're still going to have to rely on a developer to actually help you build a website or web application that will scale and not have to rely on third-party libraries that you need to install on your web app and make sure that it's maintained correctly. Because sometimes some of these developers, they come out with a plugin. It tells you like, hey, you could create a form with this plugin, or if you want to generate leads, there's an easy way to do it with this plugin. And then you go through the paces of building that out, installing that plugin, and then the developer is nowhere to be seen. And now your application is screwed because there's security vulnerabilities in it. Same thing with AI today. People are scared that their jobs are going to be affected, that developers right now, aspiring developers, are not finding a job because AI is taking over that place. In some case, yes, that is true, but it's more so around the developers that are not using AI to help them with their learning and actually help with prompting skills that could help them forward with a job. So you have to understand there are many developers out there right now that are trying to jump into the tech space, and they're learning whatever they're learning in university or college. And then once they graduate, they can't find a job because they weren't taught the correct skills that is needed today. The question is, will there be programmers? Will there always be programmers? And my answer to that is yes. There will always be programmers that are good with prompting skills, that are good with logic, that are good with making decisions. And if you're not able to do that right now, you're going to be at a loss and you're not going to be able to find a job or even move up into the position that you want to get into. One thing I've learned over the years of me being in the field, I've been in the field for over a decade, is that history always repeats itself. There's always some new tool, some new program, some new way of doing things to help with productivity, to help with getting things done more effectively, to save you more time from writing code and actually have more organization around your code so that you don't have to pinpoint what particular area is doing what. It's more about coding easier with these tools, even with AI. AI, you could prompt it a question, it understands your code base, it then figures out how to implement that solution, and it gives you a code snippet of what the potential solution could be. Now, it's up to you to either accept that code change or prompt it to do something else. And you see an issue with a lot of vibe coders out there right now that are just pushing out code and building applications a lot faster, but they're not understanding exactly what is being built, what the code structure is. And maybe today you don't really need to worry about that, but I feel like there's always going to be a need for a developer to fix the mess that AI is creating. And not having competent developers to understand this case to where I prompted to build out a feature and it's going to output the code and I'm going to just accept everything without understanding the scale, whether it's going to be performant, whether it's going to actually handle the use cases that you prompted it to handle. You have to make better decisions around what code is going to live in your project. And this is where a developer like myself will look at the code, analyze it, understand exactly how the feature is working, and then make a better decision in terms of how to fix it and prompt AI the best way I know how to fix it to do the job for me. But I'm here to tell you, you have to get with the times. You have to learn with AI. It's only going to increase the demand for developers that have this skill, and it's only going to get better from here on out. So what's actually changing is that there's not going to be coding anymore. There's less coding and more prompting. You need to understand design systems. You need to understand how to define what the requirements are so that you could build around those requirements and make something more effective. All right. And then also you have to understand the skill of reviewing AI output. If you do not do this, you are at the mercy of AI and you will be vibe coding for the future. And this is something that you cannot do. For certain things, if you're really good at what you're doing, you could get away with it. But when it comes to something that's super complex, to building an application from scratch, You have to have some type of logic and prompting skills to even get something that you could consider an MVP to be viable in the market, or just viable on your portfolio, whatever you prefer. So that's very important. I hardly code now. I usually just prompt exactly what I need to do, and I make whatever AI gives me. I'm using Claude Code as my AI assistant at the time. I'm actually going to start using Codex and look into that further because I heard that's pretty good as well. But with Claude Code, you prompt it a problem, it gives you a solution, and it actually gives you the solution within the code snippet. And then based on that, I could look at that code snippet and say, hey, this actually looks good or it doesn't, and reprompt it until I get the right answer, or just do it myself, accept the code, then rewrite it the way I want to. But it helps me with not having to deal with boilerplate. It helps me with not having to write unnecessary lines of code when I know for a fact it's not going to work, and go through that trial and error phase that every developer has to go through when it comes to solving a bug or building a feature. Now you have to be more vigilant when it comes to AI and being a developer today. You have to know how to prompt. The developers or the programmers that are not going to exist are the ones that are coding repetitively, not really understanding the problem that needs to be solved, and just adding bloat into your project. So that's something that is very important, that you want to reduce the amount of bloat that you're adding into your project so that you actually have a clean path in terms of what the project is doing and what each component is interacting in your project that actually makes the most sense. It has the most value. So if you understand that, you should be in a good spot, bro. What you need now, you need to start thinking as a builder. How do I go about building this feature? You could get the product requirements from the product manager and everything's laid out for you. But if you can't technically think about how these requirements will affect this feature, or if something is missing, you're definitely going to build something that is not viable, and you're going to have to go back and refactor the code that you've already written. And that's something that I have done multiple times until I started asking more questions around, hey, how do we go about building this? More questions that I asked, the more feedback that I got that will actually help me with defining these requirements a lot further. And then also making decisions. I don't really wait for anybody to tell me to go. I just know that when I'm ready, technically, I understand the problem, I build out the requirements, I let the product owners know, hey, this is what I'm going to be implementing. Do you agree or do you disagree? They can actually rely on me on certain things. They just say, go with your best judgment. And based on that, I just go with whatever I feel is comfortable and get to work. And you guys need to start making decisions. You know what I'm saying? You need to start having that communication and that dialogue before you start building something, because it's the worst thing that could happen is that you go about building something that the product owners tell you to do and the stakeholders tell you to do. And then once you finish it, you think that they're using it and they're happy, but then you get the feedback that they're not even using it and it's not viable to their workflow. And this is where communication is very important. I always make sure that I talk to the right people at the right time to make sure that I'm doing my job, because I don't want to waste my time building something when I could be working on something else. Understanding complexity with the problem and how to break those problems down into smaller pieces is crucial. Especially as a senior engineer, I'm doing that constantly. There's a problem that arises. People can't figure out how to solve this problem between teams. I have to figure out technically, how do we solve this problem, and can we do this in steps? Can we roll this out in batches, or do we have to do everything in one go? And this is where you start to really think outside the box and question a lot of things, so that not only just you, but everybody is accountable for what you're building, and that no one's pointing a finger that that was wrong and all that stuff. So having that communication is key, being able to build something that's very effective, and then also making decisions when you can. That's very effective too. Programmers are not disappearing. It's only enhancing the job market for the ones that are potentially prompting and getting better with that skill, and getting better with creating commands, getting better with understanding what AI has to offer depending on which tool you're using or what provider, and then coming up with different ways to improve a project, understanding where the problems are. Usually you would have a tech lead or a senior engineer look at the code, understand exactly what's going on, and then look at some of the pain points that were reported by other people, whether that's customers or someone from the internal team, to then make a decision on what needs to be refactored and what needs to be approved upon. Now you could have AI just analyze your project and it'll give you a list of things that you could improve on. And then as an engineer, you just have to look at that list and see what can be prioritized as the most important and what could hold off until the last minute or until everybody has some bandwidth. If you're not using AI, you're way behind the curve. You really need to start doing that right now because it's only going to get better. And everybody's going to keep using these AI tools, and every company is going to keep pushing this narrative.